But yeah, hello friends. Just as context for my section, I have COVID and feel like butts.
Hmm.
Blech is how I feel. So, but we're gonna do it. And I feel like I had more to say about this than I expected to. So, what better way to start off a new year, new me series than to talk about an industry that profits off of our yearly transformations and endless desire to change ourselves? While we at the Ghouls are all about growing, learning, and changing, there is something to be said about the predatory way the patriarchy, racism, and capitalism all work together as they do to commodify, objectify, and critique our bodies. The industry itself profits by actively pushing feelings of unworthiness, incompleteness, and a sense of being wrong on its consumers, but especially femme bodies, which is the focus
Hmm.
of the webtoon and episode that we watched. There's so much at play, honestly, in both
Hmm.
versions of this story, which I realized even more after listening to your section, Gabe. But there's just like there's so much being said on both ends in the sense that like you have two very like similar and different characters playing out a similar and different scenario, but like all under the same kind of pressure of like what it is to be a person, you
Hmm.
know? And there's the reason I felt like the Cabinet of Curiosities episode gave me more from the main characters just because we got to see them more, and
Hmm.
maybe that's why it was a long episode where, like,
Yeah,
the webtoon did go very quick, and I think that's maybe why I had a harder time, like, having a more intense connection with that character because I felt like I just spent so little time with them, where the Cabinet of the Curiosity episode, I was sitting there and I was like, "Wow, it's still going." So I feel like I got a lot of time with the Stacy from the show, and maybe that's why, like, I felt like I had a more complex picture from that Stacy than the
that's very
Stacy in the
true.
webtoon. But that's it's just like a time thing more than anything else. It's nothing to do with storytelling.
The
Um,
way you're ingesting the media,
that's very true too. Yeah,
maybe it's more of like the moving image that speaks to you versus like having to like I read a lot of graphic novels and so I get a lot out
that's
of just like
super.
sitting with images.
Yeah, I have the opposite. You already know at the Ghouls, I can't read very well, and
Yeah.
it does influence my ability to like enjoy media, and that's not universal because like a book that's long as heck. So I'm gonna sit with those characters for a long time. But it
Hmm.
definitely, I think, yeah, I think maybe that was part of the difference in the way my brain processed it, and that like I do have a harder time getting into like graphic novels and webtoons, just because of the way that they're presented in the tiny fonts and what have you.
Hmm.
Um, but honestly, I think the Cabinet of Curiosities episode did, in most ways, stay true to the original source material in like the overall theme.
Hmm.
But as you're saying, the approach was very different. It highlighted a multitude of issues with the pressures femme bodies face at the hands of patriarchal system and how that impacts like our mental health,
Hmm.
to the way in which like we detach from our bodies and how that has become like an essential piece of survival.
Hmm.
In the show, these themes are told by from a seemingly neurodivergent perspective. At least that's how I interpreted it.
Hmm.
And I related really heavy to Stacey because of that, and she stressed me out to all end because of
Yeah.
it. But I feel like the webtoon more so portrayed a neurotypical perspective, or at least that was like how
Hmm.
I interpreted it. And maybe that's like also part of where
Hmm.
the different relation came to, because as a very neurodivergent human, I'm like,
Hmm.
neurospicy, I'm in. Um,
Yeah.
but both characters experience this like intense detachment from their bodies and the impact of harmful beauty standards. In that, with one main fundamental difference, and that's where I kind of like had an issue. Whereas in the neurotypical story, there's no murder,
Mhm, mhm.
and I thought the show did a really amazing job showcasing this until the murder. Like I was like all for it until the murder, but it really did bother me a bit. It won't be the focus of my section, but I did want to say like my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Um,
It is a problem to have a character who is neurospicy murdering someone,
yeah, or
and
just
for
like
why, you know?
for yeah, for sure. Like I don't think it added really anything to the story. It bothered me, but this was a very obviously, as Gabe said, it was a campy. episode. Like it was a
Mhm.
very dramatized portrayal of like society's pressures and toxic beauty standards. And it did great job in some areas that left you like physically uncomfortable and like kind of uneasy and like really
Mhm.
interesting use of body horror. Um that was creative and stressful, and it activated a lot of thoughts for me too, which is something I always enjoy for media. It really resonated at times with the main character, and that the anxiety they felt in interacting with their neurotypical colleagues, I like really resonated. Like where you just kind of you may accept yourself, but you do feel like this kind of like disconnect where you're
Mhm.
like, what? Why am I so weird?
Yeah.
Why can't I just understand what these normal people are talking about? Like, I wanna not like my husband and talk about that with my friends. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
actually, like, I wanna love the person I'm with, but, you know, there's this feeling of, like, fear of missing out, as Gay was saying, FOMO, that, like, does exist when there's that kinda, like, disconnect, in your cognitive processing or, the way you process social interactions. So, I related pretty heavy to that, as well as, like, not understanding the social conventions, like Secret Santa, or like what it is and isn't appropriate party conversation.
True.
Like I was like so nervous for this party because I vividly remember Gabe when we started to become friends with Isaiah and like that group of friends.
Yeah.
We did a Secret Santa and I got the weirdest gift in the entire like I gave a assortment of birds,
Uh-huh.
like wooden birds, like plastic birds in a bird cage because
Yeah.
people told me they didn't like birds and I just thought it would be really funny to do that. And if I had this like these women were very nice for the fact that she gave her them a stuffed dead animal. But I am very thankful that like the friends that we have loved that I got them this weird bird cage of
Yes.
strangeness, and that that was just a fun, quirky thing I did that everyone enjoyed instead of like,
Yeah.
"Oh god, can this weird person please leave my house?" Like,
Yeah.
that never at any point happened. So, I don't know, I just it really resonated with me as very stressful because I've also been in the other situation. Um,
That's
but
so funny, I
yeah.
forgot about that.
Yeah, I'm weird as heck. And I just it resonated very much with it because it's like I've been on the other end of that too, where it's like I am not with a group of friends who is about it, and they're like, "Why are you like this?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I just am. What do you want?" But yeah, there's like this relation that I really felt in just like wanting so desperately to fit in, and that like kind of struggle where like if you haven't met those people where you fit in yet, being around neurotypical people can feel really stressful and almost like unnerved. Like you can like really feel like you're going insane. Because you're
Mhm.
like, I don't understand why these interactions are going the way that they are because everything I understand is different. So I just related really heavily to that. And that was enough story for me, honestly, that they're that like this wanting to fit in was they're even willing to put themselves through this dramatic transformation, alter themselves, and put themselves in harm's way because that's kind of like what you can feel like if you're trying to fit in, and it's
Mhm.
just not working. So, like as I said, that was enough of a story for me. But it bothered me so much that they made her murder her husband because I don't think it added anything to the story, other than maybe portraying this like need to be fit in can be life or death. But I think we could have done that differently.
Mhm.
And I get like it is life or death in a capitalistic society that prioritizes external appearance over internal health. But unfortunately, it's just like another example of media positioning individuals with mental health issues as well as neurodifferences as dangerous when statistically they are more likely to be the victim of violence than the perpetrator of. So that's a whole different conversation, but it definitely bothered me. So I just wanted to get that out.
That's super valid. I do think it was that he was the last obstacle of her
Yeah,
transforming into this new being, because he loved her for who she was and would have always tried to get her to go back, and there was concern there, and she couldn't really be free until she got rid of him. But I do agree
yeah,
that, like, the way that it's done,
yeah.
the fact that they, coded her in that way doesn't help.
Yeah, well, like, if it wasn't, then, like, she coulda just been a weird lady, and that would've been fine,
Yeah.
but, like, and also, like, I also get why, like, part of the what like, he was also his own like, he was nice, he cared about her, obviously, but there was also this kind of, "I like you how you are, so I
Yeah.
won't let you change," and that's something that's also, like, kind of predatory within, like,
Mhm.
unfortunate like, he has nothing but good intentions, but he is definitely being like, "You are mine, and
Yeah.
I don't want you to change, so you're not gonna." And
Mhm.
that's, like that's not okay either. Like,
Yeah.
you have to be supportive as long as they're not, like, harming themselves,
Yeah, it didn't
which she
always come
was,
from,
but
like, I love you for who you are, and I want you to be
Mhm.
happy," or even just, like, "You're hurting yourself." Like, that like, he was concerned of that, but it was very much like,
Yeah,
you
I
know
like you
yeah,
like this, yeah, where,
"I
like, the
want to keep
conversation
you the
yeah,
wife that I need, and the wife
exactly.
that does the things for me."
Yeah, no, exactly, and it was, like, definitely approached the wrong way from his perspective, so it's, like, not that, like, that
Mhm.
justifies his murder, but, like, I also got, like, how he was a problem in the show as well, like,
Yeah.
his exhibition of, like, "You are mine and you cannot change," is also a problem, so but yeah, that's just my little rant about that. But the bulk of my section will be just like how the beauty industry is trash. So as I said, the beauty industry positions itself specifically around this like detachment from self.
Mhm.
And we can't really talk about the horrors of the beauty industry without mentioning its deep roots in the patriarchy, white supremacy, and capitalism. Much
Mhm.
of the beauty industry is centered around a concept that is extremely subjective, being beauty, and forcing it to be considered objective by societal pressure and influence. And many of these standards, unfortunately, that we see within the beauty industry are rooted in whiteness or dependent upon a nuclear family structure. Or if they're not rooted in whiteness, they're exploitative of like BIPOC
Mhm.
backgrounds to like commodify those bodies and allow whiteness to commodify those things
Yeah.
and co-opt them for their own wealth and success.
Mhm.
So either way, it's a problem. And since we live in a white supremacist and patriarchal society, the standards of beauty often reinforce those pillars. And I found a article about this that kind of goes into it more heavily. It's called on everydayfeminist.com called beauty dash ideals dash racist. Clear understanding of what that will be about. And I'm not going to get into like every single thing on it, but just so you know that that is an article that you can read about. And there are lots of books that were on my list, specifically one that I really want to read that also goes into this and unpacks like how racism impacts our perspective of like also like thinness.
Mhm.
So Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings goes into the racial origins of fat phobia and how the contemporary ideal of slenderness is at its very core racialized and racist. So that's also another interesting thing that you can read at your own leisure. But essentially, the way that the patriarchy influences beauty standards is that it ends up being inherently damaging because it looks at the system that exists and says our society does not view these bodies as human, specifically femme bodies. So let's treat them like objects. And the result is the majority of human bodies are viewed as wrong, in need of constant changes. Get thinner, not too thin. Be tall, not too tall. Wear makeup, but not too much. Stay young, but not too cute. Be
Mhm.
sexy, but not a slut, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the list goes on and on. And the result is that essentially the ideal is that to make as many humans feel that there's something wrong that they need to change, feel that there's just something that needs to be different, and then feel like that solution is able to be bought.
Mhm.
And this Cabinet of Curiosities episode is not the first to call out the beauty industry. I believe there's like, specifically the perception of like Western society and
Mhm.
beauty. The Twilight Zone also did this. I
Mhm.
wrote in
I love that one.
Yeah, it was a really good one, and it was like the beauty is
Beauty
in
is
the
in the
eye
eye of
of
the
the beholder,
beholder,
which
and they're all,
literally,
like,
yes.
pig faces.
Yeah,
Very
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Love it.
Literally, like, that's what it is. I also hilariously in my COVID brain wrote, "Think of other examples," in quotes, and then didn't think of them, because then I got COVID. So I think that's fun. I'm gonna leave it in there for you to enjoy, if you do check out our blog.
There are some good ones. There's one with, Antonio Banderas. I'll have to find that, but there are a bunch of films
Yeah,
where
it's not
beauty
the
is
first
portrayed.
rodeo where this is covered, you know what I mean? Like, this is a subject that has been covered by media for a minute because it is a huge problem. Like it is something that actively damages our perceptions of self. So media has covered it
The
at the
Skin
end
I
of the
Live In is the Antonio
Yes,
Banderas,
I've heard
film.
of that. See, this might have been on the list of think of other examples.
We're thinking now, alright? This is we're in like, you guys are getting a glimpse behind the curtain. This is how it works.
Hmm. Yeah, this is how we get it done. But because of the fact that beauty is subjective, it is in the eyes of the beholder. What we see is that, like, you're kind of, as a human, if you exist in a femme body, you're constantly getting critiques from all angles. often in conflict with one another. Uh, Things that like literally you cannot keep up with, or like
Mhm,
just are so subjective. You'll never be enough in the eyes of those who are receiving you. And it really shifts our view as like Gabe was talking about, like this view of only looking at the outside, shifting that outside is all that matters, because it's the thing that's getting the most attention.
mhm,
Um, so it kind of just really encourages us to detach from ourselves. So in shifting our outward appearance to fit an ever-changing structure of what society wants, it's hard to keep up with, and it will also lead you further from self-acceptance because it's entirely rooted in your detachment from who you are actually.
mhm,
Um, and the beauty industry and capitalism itself profits off of our detachment from our own bodies, our self commodification, and working with the wants of the patriarchy. In many ways, to survive in a capitalistic society, detachment from our bodies is essential. In the
mhm,
simplest way, we are taught to ignore signals from our bodies from a very early age, thinking specifically our needs to fit what's happening externally. So if you think of like ignoring food, that you're hungry because you need to go to school, you need to go to work,
mhm,
you didn't have enough time in the morning. Like you're constantly taught from a very young age, you can't go to the bathroom when you need to go to the bathroom because your
mhm,
teacher said no. You're having to really alter what you feel inside to deal with what's happening around you externally. And it makes us kind of train ourselves to detach from those signals that tell us like what we need in order to get money and find success, which is also a pillar of survival. Yes, because we live in a capitalistic society, but ultimately, like, shouldn't be
mhm.
because we should just be able to listen to what our bodies are telling us.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
my grandmother always says, I say it all the time, that it hurts to be beautiful. Like like
yeah,
you have to hurt yourself often, like,
that
plucking your
means it's
eyebrows
working,
or
you
like,
know?
ripping hair out of your body or like,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, it means it's working, fighting through it. It makes me think of
yeah.
the Sexy Getting Ready song from
Oh
Crazy
my goodness.
Ex-Girlfriend.
Yes, I do remember that. See,
Yes.
another example.
Look at us, we're coming oh,
Yeah,
we
all
got
on
them,
the
we
spot. We
know.
got it.
Okay, we
Yeah.
know some of
It's just
those.
in here, just in our brains.
Just not down.
Um, Additionally, we were trained to treat our bodies like machines as objects that need to be altered in order to fit these external influences. And the reason for this is because of capitalism. Our outward appearance impacts our survival. They are correlate. They have to. It is an unfortunate reality. People treat people who look nicer better.
Mhm,
You're more
mhm.
likely to get opportunities. You're more likely to find stability through marriage.
Housing,
Yeah,
right,
housing. You're more likely to be accepted for house. Like there's so many
yeah.
factors. And when those things are inherently rooted in white supremacy, you have an
Mhm,
entirely additional issue that kind of ties into that because then you're actively being barred from these resources that you genuinely need to survive.
mhm,
Um, so because capitalism makes this essential, our outward appearance becomes one of the most important things because it is our gateway to survival. And what we have, our connection to our bodies, our actual what we want to look like, our concept of self is no longer a priority. Our survival becomes contingent upon fitting a mold that has nothing to do with our own personal wants and needs and everything to do with being accepted by a group. Um, and this extends to every facet of our lives in the unconscious biases that are held by those in power that influence their decision making and in distributing these resources, opportunities, and even consequences.
mhm.
If you think
Which
about
is
who
a
gets
whole
punished for
different
things,
episode.
yeah. Mhm. So when beauty standards influence all of those factors, they become essential for survival, and that's why it's a problem. Because we're all for changing your body to fit how you feel internally, if that's like something that really helps you. You know what I mean? If it's not
Mhm,
damaging to yourself, like you know what I mean. It's all I'm all for changing how you feel outside to fit how you feel inside. But when that's not the reason you're doing it, that's where you have like these kind of toxic or damaging things that can happen to
mhm,
you. If this change is done to help you feel more connected to your body, then it's a positive change. But unfortunately, because of the nature of capitalism and all the ways these things intersect, um, generally changes are done to ourselves to match this outer perception
mhm,
that does obviously give you some power in terms of life, but can be really damaging, like we see very dramatically shown in the show. Um, so essentially, it's like if the change is done for an external factor, like a judgmental partner, or to fit in with strangers that you don't even like in the show, like well, you don't even like these women,
Mhm.
like you're interested in them, yeah, but like you don't,
You don't care. Who are
yeah,
you?
exactly. It can become toxic because it'll just further detach you from your body. It's not like to fulfill what you feel inside, it's to
Yeah.
fulfill what someone else wants. And that means you're never going to be satisfied with it. So that
Mhm.
feeling of like emptiness that you think it's going to solve, it's not going to solve, unfortunately. And
Mhm.
obviously, that's easier said than done because the way capitalism intersects with everything and our concept of self, it's hard to like really know what your internal self is by the time you reach adulthood. Um, it's hard to accept that person too, because you're just so trained not to. Um, but so, when the world around you treats your body like an object, it does impact your own perception of self as well as like the connection with who you are as a person. And that can be really hard and damaging. And you just got to find your people though, because the right
Mhm.
people aren't going to do that to you. They're not going to make you feel like you're not enough.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. They're gonna love you for who you are, and not because you're the way they want you to be.
Yeah.
Like the husband, they like you because you're the way you want to be.
Hmm.
And I think that's really the biggest thing. And there really is like we do have to confront just how deep the problems of our society goes. Like as long as this episode was, it was still like a kind of superficial like
Hmm.
coasting through of those issues because there's a lot. It's very deep and there's a lot to
It was
unpack. It's
trying
not
to
something.
do a lot, and I was, like, actively, like, while that's why I thought I liked it so much at first, because I was like, "This is saying so much." I was like, "Oh my goodness. It's covering this and how, like, the neurotypical and autistic experience of, like, having to deal with that, like, stress, and then also, like, the pressures of the patriarchy," and then I was like, "But then they murdered," and I was like,
Yeah. Yeah. And the girl's like, and she just goes to work and they're like, "You're beautiful
"Yeah.
now." And she's
We
like,
we can all we can all talk about how we don't love our husbands. That's
Yeah.
great. Look at my
Yeah.
face. It's so young and beautiful."
Yeah. You're just yourself. Like you literally just put on some makeup. Like, and
Yeah.
not even a lot. Like, um
And a
like you
decent amount of it's confidence, like when you love yourself, it is something that like radiates outward. And that's something that's
mhm.
really hard to find when the world around you teaches you that that's not a thing. Like you shouldn't love yourself, but like it is like the same confidence that she literally just like put some confidence on and then went to work. And then everyone was like, oh,
Yes.
you got a haircut? Wow.
You know, something I thought of one. It's not specifically the beauty industry, but when you're talking
Mm.
about like how our appearance like affects our ability to get access to things, I was thinking about that Black
Hmm.
Mirror episode, Nosedive, where she has to like do everything because you get
Oh.
rated, you get the points.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like your credit
Where you get
score.
like, mhm. And, like, they can get things like they can come at you for things that are just, like, so seemingly not important, like, you just, like, looked at somebody weird and they're like, "I
Yeah.
don't like your face." I think how ableist that system specifically
Yeah.
would become really fast.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
neuros
literally like people who
neurospicy
aren't.
person just existing like, "This is my face." And then
Yeah.
someone's like, "I don't like them." Points
They're just
down.
they don't have any. They can't live anywhere. They can't do nothing. Like
Yeah.
that's rough.
And it
You could
impacts all facets of life. It's really crazy.
we should probably cover that episode now, like
From this new lens? Yes, we definitely should. Hell
yeah.
yeah, Gabe. Let's do it. New year, new us.
Yeah, yeah, New Year, New
Once
Us.
this COVID wears off, I'm ready to go.
Yes. Speaking of,
Yeah, in
yeah,
case y'all
yeah.
forgot.
So, um, yeah, I agree, and I think, like, the this is a good, like, a good start, and I really, really recommend the web comic, just because I think Emily Carroll does a really interesting job. I really love the way that she like personifies things too, and there's a bit of that weirdness too because she like gets up in the
Mhm.
middle of the night and she's like she's wakes up her husband to be like, I think there's a murderer in the house," and he's like, "Ugh," or whatever, and she goes and she sees like the figure and she's just like, "Nope." She goes back to bed and he's like, "Was it a murderer?" And she's just like, not
It
even
could have
talking
been.
about it. Like,
Well,
no. So just like that, like we're not even gonna talk about it thing. but yeah, just like linger with it and give the show a shot. Again, not all the episodes are winners, and that's also because it's like that's also subjective. Like you might really like the episode where they talk all old timey and
Yeah,
or
it
like
just might
Edgar
not
Allan
be our
Poe.
cup of tea.
Yeah,
Not all media is made for everybody.
yeah, exactly. There's some that were like pretty decent, and then others where you're like,
Yeah,
and yeah, you might also hate this one, and fine, whatever. I thought it was fun
yeah.
and quirky
That was
and
fun
a
and quirky
good
too.
kickoff to the year. So we'll be doing more New Year, New Me. We're going to be talking about all kinds of transformations or identity again, and how
Yeah.
we are perceived by the world, and how that impacts the way that we move throughout it, and how you find yourself and what that means for you,
Mhm.
and societal pressures, blah 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 blah.
Yeah. 'Cause they be there,
Think
they
of more
do.
things.
Yeah. No, I mean, it literally is. They do be there. Like, it is a real thing that exists that actively impacts our lives. Like, I don't know. Should people treat you vastly different when you wear makeup, or is that just me? Like, like
I super do.
yeah, so it's just like, yeah, if you perceive your or if people perceive you in the way that, like, they expect, generally, they're gonna be nicer to you, and it's like,
It's very true.
an unfortunate reality of what it is to exist in this society. I mean, maybe it's all societies, but I haven't been to all societies, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
I could not tell you, but it definitely sucks.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wanna I wanna share a really like it sucks for cat calls to happen, but I had this really one that I think was pretty funny.
Okay, tell
Just
me
because
about it.
so I was like I was at the bus stop or trolley stop, I'm waiting, and I had my headphones in. I've been listening to my
Yeah.
audiobook. And I gave myself a really lofty goal for this year. Gotta get on it. So I'm listening to my audiobook and I hear like this shout from a car and it sounds like it's like, hey, yo, beautiful. But I got my headphones in, so I'm not like paying attention. And after a while, this person has said it like 4 times, like, hey, yo, beautiful. So then I turn and I see that the window is going up. And then I turn away. And so they rolled it back down to keep going. Like, hey, you beautiful. Hey, yo, beautiful. Hey, yo, beautiful. And I'm just not. I'm just like,
It's
okay, I can't hear you.
determination.
Like, whatever. And then they turn to like go in front, and I'm looking down at my phone. And I just hear, hey, yo, beautiful. I'm like, do I know this person?
They
Like,
w
they should have said more words if I knew them. But I was like,
if they knew
how
you, they coulda just
insistent.
said your
Yeah,
name.
it was it was so insistent. It was hilarious. Like, "Hey, hey, you beautiful." I'm like, what do you want to happen? What is the next thing that's I'm just be like, "Yeah."
Yeah, I am the beautiful, you are the love of my life.
You were the
Let's
man
run
in the
off
car who
and you are the car
misconnection.
person. Let's
Misconnection.
go.
I was waiting for the trolley. You were the man who rolled down your window and then rolled it back up and then rolled it back down and said, "Hey, you're
Said,
beautiful"
"Hey, you
17 times.
beautiful." 17.
In the span of 3 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
what? So that
"Are
was just
you okay?" Is
yeah,
that
this is not like I just wanna make sure
yeah,
you're cool.
yeah,
What's going on with you? So,
yeah.
yeah, but
It's
again,
good.
usually super gross, and it was still like, I don't why are you talking to me? I don't know you. It's morning. I'm going
Yeah.
to my doctor's appointment.
Yeah,
I wanna talk to
I'm
you.
not trying to be a yo beautiful. I'm trying to be
I'm
I'm just
supposed to be
trying to
like,
be a
"Hey, yo,
normal.
healthy, and all your
Yeah.
tests are going well." Okay, like, that's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to
My
be.
priority is my physical inside health. I don't
Yeah.
even know what my face is today,
I don't even know. But
but
yes.
apparently it's beautiful, so
Mhm.
that's good for you.
It is also, like, very true, like, people are gonna treat you differently when you wear different things. Even sometimes when you're just, like, femme presenting or mask presenting that day, like, you get a whole
Mhm.
different
Oh, you get
vibe.
a whole different bag of tricks
Yeah.
that exists in the world. People treat you entirely differently. I would
Yeah.
notice, like, even, like, when I used to teach, like, kids, children, tiny children, would be significantly, like, better behaved and nicer to me when I was, like, done up, like,
Uh-huh.
I looked nice, and they would be like, "This cat," and I was like, "Okay, I'm just, like, a person."
Yeah,
But,
this
like,
is
I
just
would
a
notice,
regular
like, the
person.
difference, or even, like, parents would be nicer to me, like, at pickup, and I'd be like, "Okay, well,
Alright.
this is not able to be maintained at all times."
Like,
So,
ew. Yeah.
Imma look like regular most of the time,
Yeah.
and then it's like a treat for everybody when I look nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah, I just
There's
remember
always
that
a
being, like, a
feeling.
thing and being like, "Ew." I
Now
don't
with
like that.
Zoom, I only gotta worry about like the,
They even
waist up.
in Zoom, they have the filters that make you look nicer than you actually do. I was like, "My
Yeah.
skin looks nice in Zoom. It doesn't look nice here." It doesn't let you do it in StreamYard.
No.
But in my defense, I do have a plague, so
I think you look lovely for a plague.
thank you, thank you. I didn't see you when you had the plague, so I don't
Yeah,
know
I
how
didn't
you
want
look,
the world
but
to
I
see
would
me.
you look lovely right now,
Thank you.
and probably also when you had the plague, but I didn't see you then, so
Yeah. I'll say this, everybody out there, when you had the plague, because you probably did,
you
everybody
probably had
but
it at
our
this
one friend
point.
Roland has had the plague, and
Well, he's
you
gonna
look
I
knock on wood, oh
it's
my gosh.
I don't want that for you, Roland, I'm really sorry, but I went this entire time not having it, and
Yeah.
it's really hard not to get it, I guess.
But you'll still be beautiful,
Yeah,
okay? Because it's all about the inside,
it
as
is all
cheesy as
about
that
the
is.
inside.
Because then it goes to your outside.
Roland, I know you
It
actively
matches.
listen to us. I want you to know I don't want you to get the plague. Like, genuinely, I don't want that for you because it sucks. And I don't want you to have that because you're a wonderful human. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Our
because he
literal
listens to
one
our show
listener.
every week. So I'm making sure that, like, he knows. I didn't mean nothing by that.
Yes. And what we do mean is that everyone who listens and watches us is beautiful. Listening
Yeah,
makes you beautiful. I'm just gonna say it.
yeah. And in 2023, because that's what year it is, we want you to find yourself, and
Yeah.
we're here for that journey. And if that's different than what the world wants, we're gonna fight the world with you.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, we'll fight the world with you. And if you think of any other examples,
Yeah,
the
in the list
cat and
of
I couldn't think.
examples.
Yeah, list other
Yeah.
examples. If you have those other examples, if you want to like throw them out
Let
here,
us
like
know.
goodbye mommy or whatever, all those other ones. Is it goodnight mommy? But I also don't
I
think
just
that was
heard
about.
"good vibe, mommy," and I was like, "Who are you? What? Is
No,
this
it's
like
like that.
mommy sorry? Like, what?"
So, mommy, sorry. No,
That's
there's
all I heard. Okay, "Good Night, Mommy" is a movie, is
it's
a
a
movie,
film.
right?
It's a film. I think it's
Yeah.
like Australian or something.
Yes, I've seen
And
that.
the mom gets like facial reconstructive surgery or
Yeah.
something. There's also a really great book by Chuck Palahniuk,
Mm.
Invisible Monsters, I want to say. I can't spell Chuck Palahniuk's name, so I'm just gonna type it in here. No, I have Beautiful You, but I haven't read that. But yeah, there's one, Invisible Monsters. So
Mm.
good. That's about the beauty industry, and it was a very good book. I've
Well, who knows, maybe one day we'll
unfortunately read a
just
lot of
do
him. So,
yeah,
yeah, I'll,
we'll do all of the beauty
we'll
industry
do a
ones, and
beauty
then I'll
industry.
actually unpack any of it instead of just saying the things in my brain, and I won't have COVID then, so it'll just go better for everybody.
Yeah.
I love that
Well,
for us in the future.
me too. Well, stay tuned for or tune in next week. We're talking about more new year, new us. We have quite a few cool things lined up for this year that we're covering. We're very excited. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna try to dress up some more and don't get married.
Bully your kids. They will.
Okay. I'm leaving it at that. That was